Hey friends, it's Lauren. Thanks for joining me in my craft room today. I'm super excited to bring to you another Spellbinders video, this time using the Jump for Joy from their Card Maker 2 collection. I'm going to stamp out all three of the frogs from this stamp set. I'm going to be creating three different cards and I wanted to feature a frog on each one of them. So I am going to peel these off. This is my first time opening up the stamp set, so they are super sticky, which is great, and make sure that they will cling to my Misty very well. So I'm laying them out so I have plenty of room to stamp, color, and cut them out. I'm going to be using my Ink on 3 Blackout ink, which is my favorite ink for alcohol marker coloring. I get the least amount of blending from my ink into my coloring. Or bleeding, I guess I should say. So it takes me a couple stamps to get nice clean images because these are brand new stamps. Like I said, that was my first time opening them up. I'm going to color in all of my frogs differently. For this first frog, I am coloring it in brown. I was really inspired when I saw this stamp set to create a Harry Potter chocolate frog inspired card, which you may have seen if you checked this out on my Instagram or Facebook or my blog. And I am going to be using my EBs to color this frog in. So I start with my darkest tone, work into the medium, and then blend everything with the light. And then I bring in an even darker tone or the darkest, depending on how many markers I have, to add some little spots just to give my frog some character and just to bring it more to life. For my second frog, I'm going to go with a traditional green frog, so I'm using my DGs. Again, starting with my darkest, giving any type of shadow or outline to my critter, then bringing in a mid-tone and blending that out, just kind of bringing that shadow out more. And then I will bring in my lightest and then blend everything together. I do have one more lighter green, so after I color this in, I'm going to bring out my even lighter shade to really blend in his stomach and his face, just to give it a little more depth and color. I'll bring out that dark tone just like I did with my chocolate frog and just add some little speckles here and there just to really kind of give my frog some character. And for my last frog, I thought it'd be fun to do more of a jungle inspired frog. So I'm going to be bringing out oranges. I did color the eyes for both the green and the orange frog in a light blue, just to give it some color into the eyes, make it look a little more friendly. Not that these frogs don't look friendly, they're awfully cute. And then some blush to my green and orange frog, just to give it some cheeks and some character. So for my orange frog, I'm going to be using my OR markers. I have three shades, so I'm starting with my darkest, again, just like I did with my green frog and my brown. And then I use that mid-tone just to bring that color out. And then I will use the lightest to color everything over again. Now, a lot of this frog is covered by my leaf, so not a lot of orange coloring for this guy. But once I'm all done, I will then bring out some greens to color in the leaf. I'm going to be using my AG colors. I'm going to be using my AG colors. So I'm going to start with my darkest and outline the leaf. There's lots of texture to this leaf. There's little areas inside the leaf that I can use to give some more shadow into my leaf. So again, just outlining my leaf with the AG, the darkest one, and then I'll bring in that mid-tone, blend it out, and then the lightest to color in the darkest part of the leaf, and then I'm going to use an even lighter shade to color in those little oval sections of the leaf, just to give it some kind of look like it's in the jungle, a jungly leaf. And once I'm all done coloring these frogs, I'm going to go ahead and fussy cut them off camera. I also am going to do a lot of heat foiling with my glimmer plates and some die cutting off the screen. I'm just sharing the stamp set, how I colored it in, and then how I'm using it on these cards. So once I have everything die cut and foiled, I'm just going to share each step putting the card together. So for our first card, we are going to be using our green frog. I used the die set from Spellbinders called Color Block Slices to cut out some blue and two different shades of green cardstock. And then I also glimmered these cute little mushrooms from the Autumn Woods Hot Foil Kit and then colored them in with my watercolor markers just to fill them in. I did use red foil for the top of my mushrooms and gold for the bottom. It's not a perfect, there's like a line where the color changes, and that's okay. I just wanted to give them a little bit of character by having two different shades of the glimmer foil. So I lined up all my triangle pieces to cover my A2 cardstock that I'm going to use as my card front. And then I use this large piece of repositional tape to hold them all together, so that way I don't have to figure out where exactly I line them up. I can move them all at one time. So I picked them all up with the tape, and I'm adding my glue to my card base instead of my die cut images or die cut pieces. So once my card base or my card front has glue all over it, I can take that cluster of triangles and place it right back on, and I know that it will cover my card. Now there was a tiny bit of movement, but that's okay. I'm going to peel off this repositional tape, and then I can kind of move around some of those triangles to have a better fit on the card and not as many gaps like this one has here. So once that is all snug and adhered down, I'm just going to grab some large scissors and I'm going to trim off all of the excess of these triangles. These dies are really cool. They're perfect not only for A2, but just about any size card because they are so large. So now that my background is done, I can start clustering my images and figuring out my layout. I'm going to start with my mushrooms, and my frog's going to sit on top. And while I was laying this out, I thought something was kind of missing, so I went ahead and grabbed my geometrical floral frames, and I'm going to grab this more circular one and die cut it out of some white cardstock, and that will just add more to the focal point of the card. I'm going to use wet glue to adhere this down, so I'm just grabbing my glue with a fine tip and adding glue all around that geometric shape and adhering it to where those triangles are all kind of meeting on the left side of the card. Once that's all nice and glued down, I can start layering on my mushrooms. My mushroom in the back is going to be glued straight to the card front, and then I will have a mushroom in front of that completely popped up with some foam squares. And then I'll have a mushroom where I pop up the top with foam squares, but then glue the bottom of it down just to create kind of a look of 3 different mushrooms in a row. So once I have my foam on that third mushroom, just pulling off that release paper and adding glue to the bottom of the mushroom stem. And there I have my 3 mushrooms nicely clustered. For my frog, I'm going to pop up the top part of my frog because that mushroom in the back is glued down to the card front. And then the bottom of my frog, I'm just going to use some wet glue and adhere it down to that mushroom that's already popped up with dimension. Now the stamp set is really awesome. There are a ton of different punny sentiments as well, and I thought it'd be fun to use the Your Unforgettable sentiment for this card. I was thinking it'd be a great thank you card or a celebratory card. So I am going to bring out my Glimmer and die set called Glimmering Build-A-Banner. And I'm going to die cut out the banner from that set. I love that I can use these die cuts for anything, not just for glimmering. And I'm going to die cut it out of some white cardstock, just this wavy banner here. And then I will bring out my sentiment, and I'm going to be using my VersaFine and Onyx Black because these are, again, brand new stamps, and I know I'm going to get a nice clean image the first time with my VersaFine. But because my sentiment is in a banner, and the sentiment is straight, I need to kind of play around with it to get it to fit inside of that curvy banner. So I'm picking it up with my clear block, and then I'm just gonna twist it and curve it so it fits inside of that sentiment. That's the great thing about clear stamps, is that you can see through them and be able to adjust your sentiment to fit into your die cut. So it takes me a little bit here. I wanted to leave it in to show you how I did it. And once I'm happy with that curve on the sentiment, I'm just going to ink it up with my black cardstock, test it, and of course it's stamped really nicely. So I'll go ahead and stamp onto my banner. And now that my sentiment is done, I can add it to the card. I'm going to pop it so it fits up the same level as our mushroom there, but I'm just going to avoid where my mushroom is adhered and add pop squares or foam squares around it and then add that to the card. And of course, no card is complete without some type of shimmer. So I'm going to be adding my rainbow drops, which I've had forever from Spellbinders. I believe it's retired now, so if you're lucky to still have one, I just added 3 of the green onto my card. For my second card, I'm going to go again with a little more tropical look, so I thought it'd be fun to take this kind of olive colored cardstock, and I used the Scallops embossing folder to add some texture, and then I also took a piece of white cardstock and I heat foiled on the hand-drawn wave glimmer plate with some aura foil, and I'm just going to trim around that bottom part there to fit on top. So now I have lots of fun scaly curves going on this card. So now I need to trim this plate to fit on top of my A2 card front. So I'm just trimming off where the foiling stops on the top part. And then I'm going to trim it to be 4 1/4 inches wide. I used my little trimmer and I should just got my big one out because it has 4 1/4 measurements on there. But I just wanted to make sure it was going to fit on my card nicely. So I am using my green just to help me place it onto my trimmer. I slid it over and now I have a top cut to the same width as my card front. So there we go. Now we have our background. I'm just going to add my frog and my sentiment. That little sentiment bubble is cut from the Art Studio Abstracts die set, and I'm going to use that to stamp my sentiment in. So just like that first sentiment, I'm going to grab my VersaFine Onyx Black and I'm just going to stamp it right inside that little bubble looking thing, and it says "You make me jump for joy," which I thought was so cute with the frogs. I'm using some foam strips to adhere my glimmered paper to the top of my card front, which again is embossed. And I was looking at it and I was like, I need some shine. So I'm going to grab my watercolors and then just splattering on some gold metallic watercolor just to add a little bit more to the background. Not that it was plain by any means. The embossing and the heat foiling made it really stand out, but I wanted some splatter on there. Once it was dry, I'm going to pop up my frog. I end up popping it up on top of my already popped up like hand-drawn waves, so I did have to double up on my foam squares on the bottom half of the frog that was touching the green scallop background. And then I also popped up my sentiment, and that card front is done. But of course we need some more of that bling, so I'm bringing out more of my rainbow drops, and this time I'm going to add 3 different ones in orange to really bring the color of that frog out more onto the card, so I have some orange to match it. Just using a jewel picker and wet glue to glue these down. And there we go, card front number 2. And for the third, save the best for last, it's my favorite, is my Harry Potter inspired one. So I took some navy cardstock and I heat foiled on some of my gilded nested rectangles, the 2 largest ones. I wanted to create a frame. And then I also die cut from that same Glimmer and die cut set, the Build a Banner set, and I just die cut 2 of the banner ends and 1 wavy, and I'm going to emboss my sentiment because I want it to be gold. I want this card to be very gold. So I am taking the sentiment and again need to curve it to fit my banner, and I'm doing Take a Leap of Faith and just using my clear block and my banner to help me curve it. I use some anti-static powder on my little banner to help me with embossing, and I'm going to grab my Versamark and stamp that sentiment. I have some ultra fine gold embossing powder, so I'm going to cover up my sentiment with the help of my reversible tweezers to help keep it in place. And once I have enough embossing powder on my sentiment, I'm going to heat up my heat gun and melt it down. So I saved you from watching me pour my powder back into my container, and here I am melting that embossing powder. So once that was cooled down, I'm going to glue my banner together. So I'm just adding a little bit of wet glue to the edges of each of my banner and adhering a banner end to the back. I love adding that kind of diagonal line to those end pieces using my Glimmer hot foil, and I use polished brass again because I want that gold on this card. So now that my banner sentiment is done and I already have my chocolate frog, I'm just going to use my little trimmer here to trim off any of the excess of my blue because it didn't foil perfectly centered to my card front here, so no big deal. I'm just trimming around it. And then I'm going to pop up my sentiment onto this card, but I wanted just the banner front to be popped up. So I'm just adding foam squares to the white with the sentiment banner, and then I'm actually going to use wet glue to glue down the edges of the banner, so that way it looks like it's kind of floating in the middle. I hope that made sense. You'll see here. I'm adding wet glue just to the banner ends. I've already peeled off the release paper off my foam squares, and I'm adhering it to this navy blue cardstock. And then I will also pop up my frog using foam squares. So I'm just going to add a bunch behind him. Once I have enough, I will pull up the release paper and place him on top of the sentiment, kind of at a fun angle, like he's going to jump out of the chocolate frog box. Now I wanted to add some sparkle, so I'm grabbing one of my sparkle blends. This is Ivory Elegance, and I'm going to add on just any of the gold, more yellowy gold sequins from this mix. So just using my jewel picker, going around and adding a bunch, and then using wet glue to glue them down. And then I grabbed a piece of gold metallic cardstock. I cut a frame because I don't like to waste any unseen fancy paper cardstock. I also decided to add some splatter, even though I was taking a risk here because I already had my sentiment and my frog. So I used a really fine paintbrush in that same yellow gold metallic paint or watercolor paint and splattered some on. And now I can get everything ready for my card front. I'm gluing down that frame first to a piece of white cardstock, just extra cardstock in my stash. And then I will use some wide foam tape to adhere my navy blue front. And that will complete this card. It's my favorite. I think it's so fun. I can't wait to give it to a friend or give it to someone that, you know, needs a little bit of encouragement, who is also a Harry Potter fan. So that is that card. So here is a look at all three card fronts. I'm going to add them to some sturdy card bases right after this, but I just wanted to share with you some really awesome ideas using this Jump for Joy stamp set. It's so adorable. I hope you check it out. You can use the links down below to find that stamp set, as well as everything else I used to create these three cards. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, I hope you'll click like. And if you're new here, I hope I've inspired you to subscribe and come back. Let me know in the comments which one was your favorite. Is it the Harry Potter one, like mine? Thank you again for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful day. Bye!